RugbyWorks Talks, our podcast where we have the privilege of talking to a wide variety of interesting people who have interesting stories to tell. Today, I'm here with Stuart Walters, who's the Chief Information Officer at BDO. I'm sure he's going to tell us a bit about what that actually entails at some point. But welcome, Stuart. Thank you for giving up your time to join us.
No problem, and absolutely pleasure to be with you.
Fantastic. Stuart, shall we start? We'll start first with just making sure everybody understands what Chief Information Officer at BDO is. What exactly is that?
It's an interesting question. I'm responsible. So BDO is an accountancy, business and tax advisory firm. So we give advice to other companies and organisations and also their tax advice, and also audit some organisations as well. My role within the firm in the UK business is to provide our internal customers, people who are doing work for BDO, and some of our external clients with digital services and support on technology, just to make sure that we help both internal people and our external clients succeed.
Fantastic. So you're cyber security as well, are you? You're all that?
Absolutely. All of that, all the support's into me. I sometimes say anything with a plug on it is my responsibility, but it's much more wider than that these days as well.
Fantastic. Well, can you tell us, because apart from what you do is fascinating, I believe you also a passionate lover of rugby. So let's start with a bit of rugby. Tell us a bit about that. Who have you played for? What's your love of rugby all about?
So unfortunately, I support Wasps, so I'm still undecided on where to go next, really. So avid supporter of Wasps. I was a teenager. Interestingly, I used to live in the Midlands, up near Birmingham, Coventry area, whilst Wasps were in St Albans, I believe, down here in the south. And then when I moved south, Wasps moved into the Midlands. So they've sort of been avoiding me, and obviously in recent years, unfortunately, gone bankrupt. So currently without a club, if I'm honest. So still trying to decide on who to follow next.
So do you think you'll go local to where you're living now, or will you stay true to your Midlands roots?
Well, my sons are distributed around the country. So my oldest is in Manchester, and he's now decided to follow Sale, and my youngest lives with me in London, and he's decided to follow Harlequin. So they've both split and divided the house. So I'm still trying to decide whether to go with one of those or to actually go somewhere completely different like that, fortunately. But avid supporter, played from the age of 11 from school up until probably way too old into my late 30s, and struggled with injuries and all sorts of things during the later career of rugby.
So you said you started playing when you were 11. Why is rugby important to you? What was happening in your life when you started rugby?
So I was fortunate to go to a state school who actually had rugby as part of their syllabus and played a lot of rugby. It was a school in the Midlands. And it was, to be honest, at that age, it was one of the easiest ways to get out of lessons was to play rugby or play a musical instrument at this particular school. So I decided rugby. I wasn't very musical. So it was a decision to join the rugby team at the age of 11. It gave me a big outlet, to be fair. I had a mild ADHD, probably still have. I was undiagnosed dyslexic as well at 11. So it was that outlet, and it was a game where I utilised my physicality, my controlled aggression, and really sort of get that team and camaraderie and physical outlet, and I found that rugby provided that to me.
So what was school like for you? You're clearly desperately trying to get out of it, but what was it like for you at 11 with ADHD, dyslexia, maybe not quite fitting into the academic mainstream that school expects?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It was back in the 80s, and dyslexia wasn't really a known thing. It wasn't really something that people identified at those at any age, really. So, but if you look at my school reports, it's fairly stark. So computer science, physics, maths, I was in top sets, getting great results. English, any foreign language is just horrendous. And other sort of any subject that involved a lot of writing, I was fairly low. So it was interesting. It was difficult because I think as back then, I'm sure it's changed now. I'm sure there's a lot more support for dyslexic. I know because my son is also dyslexic, and he's had quite a lot of support through his schooling. But back then, everybody would mark your English. So you'd hand an essay in to the geography teacher, and they would go through your essay and they'd mark your English and scribble then pen all over, especially your spelling. And it's very frustrating because you're thinking, well, this is a geography class, not an English class. I get enough of that feedback during an English class. I don't need it as well in geography and history and anything else where I put pen to paper. So it's quite frustrated. And like I said, it was just a complete unknown. So completely undiagnosed and not really supported at the school because those were just the days that they didn't really recognise it.
And certainly, I completely empathise with that. But certainly with the young people that we work with, still, I'm sad to say, they find the school environment, if they've got any barriers to learning. I think the posh new words are neurodiverse, aren't they, for young people, or for any age, who have challenges with penetrating learning in the conventional way. But certainly they still find it unbelievably frustrating. That they are doing their best, but they're not able to conform. And so for many of the young people that we see who end up excluded from school, part of that is often triggered by just not being able to fit into mainstream education and then starting to act out. So how did you cope? Did you just pour all of your energy into rugby, or were you constantly in trouble at school?
I wouldn't say constantly. My mum probably would disagree. She'd probably say constantly. But I was sort of in and out of trouble, especially in the early days, so 11, 12, 13. I think ADHD sort of milded out during my later years at school. But I also think some of that was potentially to do with the fact that I had an outlet. I had something that I could do and I could focus on. Very physical sport, as you know. If you're training twice a week and playing on a Saturday, you're getting as much adrenaline out of your system as you can probably possibly get. So I think a combination of just maturing and getting a little bit older, and I think probably the rugby helped with that as well. But it was probably the big thing that I did outside of schooling was actually attend rugby.
Brilliant. What takes you how well did you do at 16 in school? Did you leave school? Did you do A levels? Did you go to university? What was your path to this incredibly illustrious job at BDO?
No, none of that. I left at 16. The first opportunity to get out was I took. I left with 3 GCSEs, so maths, physics, and computer science, funnily enough. That I was
Well, you got 2 more than me. I was older than you. I got O levels, but you got 2 more than I did.
I just got out as quickly as possible, really. I always tell people today that I got at the Yellow Pages, which was like a big Yahoo, and went through computers, went to the computer section, and literally just found and ended up on a YTS scheme at a local computer company at the age of 16.
They were good, those schemes. They were really good.
For introducing people into work, getting you into that mentality. Absolutely. Especially for those people who were leaving school at 16. I then did go back and did an AS level in psychology, because it was just an area that I was interested in. And it was my psychology teacher that first highlighted dyslexia. And he commented to me and said, I mark you for what I think you're trying to say rather than actually what's on the paper, because what I'm trying to put across and what's actually written down can be completely different. So he was one of the first people that actually identified and said, you've probably got a learning difficulty here. So I did do that. And that was probably when I was about 16, 17, 18 years old.
You did your YTS, you did your psychology AS level.
Indeed.
And what's your journey then to being in the C-suite of an enormous multinational company?
So I think I made some right decisions. I just made some lucky decisions. I think I didn't realise until I got dyslexia tested at 40 that my non-verbal reasoning skills are very high. So getting into IT that early was a great decision, lucky decision. It was the area that I was interested in. It was the area that excited me. So that's where I ended up. And then worked for a number of firms. So everybody talks about the looming recession, but I sat through one of those in the 80s, where I went through probably about 4 or 5 jobs before the age of 21, through different companies going bankrupt and being made redundant. So I had at least 2 companies that went bankrupt on me. I moved a couple of times. I then ended up at about the age of 22, 23, joining a law firm. And I was employed there to open boxes. I wasn't even allowed to touch the computers. That's my first job. But I could open boxes, put them down, plug them in. And that was my role. My first professional training course was a manual handling course that taught you how to pick boxes up and carry them across the room in a safe way and put them back down. So that then again, I think that was very just lucky and perseverance around just continually. When I lost those jobs, I just got the Yellow Pages back out, started phoning people up, found another one. So perseverance and just a bit of luck. I think you get a little bit of luck in life, and if you're persevering, you will find that luck and stick with it. So that job in that law firm when I was 23, 24, I stayed there for 14, 15 years and basically went from opening boxes to the number 2 to the CIO. So I was the number 2 to the CIO at a large law firm by the time I was in my late 20s, early 30s.
Fantastic. And that was just by proving yourself at every step of the way, saying yes to the opportunities and proving yourself and being actually quite good at IT, not just opening boxes.
Exactly. So like I say, it was fortunate I chose that career, but I do think perseverance, I think And again, in my later years, I've done a lot more reading or audiobooks. So I listen to lots of audiobooks. A great audiobook is a book called Grit, which I'm a big supporter of, which is about dogged determination and perseverance and keep going. And the knockbacks that you get, just keep persevering, keep going, and just don't take no for an answer. I always tell managers and people in my teams, if you're banging on a door and the door isn't open, look for a window, because you'll get in, but find an alternative route for getting that thing complete or that task done. So I think there's a lot of determination, a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours, and proving yourself, and just keep banging at the door, really.
So you're sat in your law firm, you're number 2. Did you decide I want to be number 1? I'm going for that top job?
Absolutely. That was the next step. It was, I wanted a number 1 role. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to sort of own my own destiny and own the destiny for the digital and IT of those types of firms in professional services. So I, like Dick Whittington, moved to London to see if I can find, which is where most of the professional services firms are, lawyers and accountancies. So came to London at about the age of probably about late 30s to find my first role as a CIO in a law firm down here, and have done that role now for 3-4 law firms and now an accountancy firm, and been there for the last 7 years.
So when you got to London, did you secure a CIO, number 1, the Chief Information Officer?
I did. I started applying down here and then moved with the role. So once I found a role down here, I moved down to London for that role.
Ever regretted it? In the city smoke man, that's you?
Absolutely not. I've always loved London. It's my favourite city in the world. I'm now privileged enough to live in it. When I was working in Birmingham, I would travel a lot and travel to London to do work, but always loved the city. So ending up in the centre of it, Baker Street for work, and very central for living. It's a massive privilege, but a place that I absolutely adore.
I like to hear that. I'm a Londoner by birth. I did my first 12 years in London. So it's in my blood, that city. I love it. And now I have the privilege of working there. But I live in the greatest city on the south coast. I live in Portsmouth, which I absolutely love. I love living by the sea, actually.
And that's not a bad journey, is it? We've got people who live in Portsmouth in that direction. So getting into London, it's not as bad as people would think to get from Portsmouth to London.
It's slightly irritating because it is less than 70 miles and takes an hour and 40 minutes. And that's slightly irritating on the train, and that's on a good day. That's not on a strike day, a slow day, a wet day, a hot day, a snow day. No, that's just on a perfectly ordinary day. That's how long it takes. But it is easy, and you get into Waterloo, which is an incredibly convenient station for anywhere you want to be really in London. So yeah, I love it down here. So you've been at BDO for 7 years. That's a long time. Are you staying?
Yes,
Are you looking for a new challenge?
Yes, I made partner about 2 years ago now, so I'm staying to support the company. They really understand digital. They're a great place to work, great culture, and a hugely inclusive culture, and a culture that really does focus on well-being and people and looking after people, but also a firm that's really trying to drive technology and trying to really understand how technology can help business and help our clients. So I'm staying. This is where I'm going to be.
Excellent. And I'm really interested. I'm passionate about inclusivity. And what is it? You said that BDO have made a really inclusive culture. What does that feel like? What is it that they do that enables that culture? Are there any things that you can point to that really enable that inclusive culture?
So there's a major drive around bringing yourself to work. So it doesn't matter your background, and as you were saying about, it's now called neurodiversity. I think my journey is also called socially mobile now. I think it's the terminology they use. Our managing partner, our CEO, is socially mobile. Never went to university. There's a lot of people on our board very similar. So that whole acceptance of bringing yourself to work, whatever that is and whatever that looks like, and using that to the best benefit of the firm is a massive part of that culture. And that inclusivity, it doesn't matter what your background is, what the makeup of you is. It's about finding out what that special bit of you is that you can bring to work and to help move the firm forward. So that's a huge part of it. There's also a major effort and focus on well-being and making sure that people are looked after, and we get our work-life balance correct. There's a lot of surveys go out around work-life balance. We've implemented what we call Workable, which is the way we manage our offices and our space and how we work as individuals. It is about the firm first and the clients first, but it is about you as well, and making sure that you're working in the right way, in the right place, for the benefit of everybody, not just for the benefit of the firm, for the benefit of your team, for the benefit of you, and for the benefit of the firm. So all of that, I think, adds to that inclusive culture, and that's just a great place to work.
So I really like that, bring yourself to work, because at Dallaglio RugbyWorks, obviously we have a really comprehensive theory of change. We intellectually and academically understand why the interventions that we use, whether that's rugby or whether that's an employability workshop or whether that's a mental wellbeing workshop or whether that's linking with employers like BDO, we understand intellectually why our theory of change, our program works. But actually what makes it work is that we employ authentic, credible people, and they build trusted adult relationships with the young people. That is actually what makes it work, is the people element of it.
Yeah.
And so we definitely encourage our staff to bring themselves to work and employ people with a very diverse range of backgrounds and diverse cultures, a broad range of different experiences. But it's interesting to hear that in an accountancy firm, because I imagine, very prejudiced of me, but I imagine in an accountancy firm, we just bring our numbers to work and we're much more homogenous than you're describing. And yet my personal experience in the commercial world before Dallaglio RugbyWorks is actually diversity really drives profit as well. So it seems like that's something that BDO have put some thought into. How do you think being a more diverse, inclusive firm is actually helping the bottom line of the business?
And if you look at all the management material around, it does drive profit, it does drive better business. But it brings that creative thinking, it brings that lots of people's ideas, rather than just having the beige grey accountant in a grey suit, with that one track mind, with that one way of thinking. Adding that diversity to board tables, to teams, to management structures, brings that diversity of thinking as well, and more creative thinking. And something that we're, again, really major on is around innovation and digital. And where we talk about digital and digital mindset, we talk about actually doing things differently. It's not actually about just technology thinking, it's about different thinking. It's almost a different way of thinking. And the more diverse group of people you can get, the more different thinking you get around the table. And that helps with innovation and driving change as well. So it definitely does have an impact on business performance. There's no doubt about it.
I think you're right. And I think that it also helps develop an empathy with your clients, who inevitably everybody comes from different backgrounds. So I can absolutely see that. Moving to a slightly different direction, although you've started to touch on it, we work with young people who are aged 11 to 18. So for actually a big chunk of the young people we work with, they're looking at getting into the workplace in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, and they're going to be in there for the next 50 years, more probably, of their working lives. What, to you, with your technology background, what are you advising clients? What are going to be the priorities for the future of work in the next few years? What do you think that the top things are that young people are going to need?
So whenever I ask to predict the future, I always tend to look into the past and then try not to predict too much into the future, because the rate of change, especially around digital and technology and innovation, is crazy. So I think adaptability is massive. I think that is one thing we don't know. I think there's I can't remember who wrote it. We educate children in universities today for jobs that probably won't exist for when they actually hit the workforce. So this whole trying to predict the future, and again, in the last 2 years, the technology space has just got so quick, quicker than I've ever known it, with the recent releases of generative AI and ChatGPT and things like that. So trying to predict the future is very hard. So adaptability, I think, is massive. Making sure that you are capable of changing, pivoting, and becoming a different skill set and a different individual, and embracing technology, because I think that's going to, especially in the professional services space, technology is huge, and different ways of working. And being inquisitive, it's a big thing that we're trying to push in the firm at the moment, about a culture of learning and a culture of being curious. The technology platforms that we're seeing change on a daily basis. Your iPhone changes, you get new features, new functionalities, the technology changes, and that pace is getting quicker. So being courageous, being curious, and being adaptable, I think, are massive things that people need to be prepared to do and be as we move forward. Obviously, as I said, in the tech space, AI and generative AI and ChatGPT or Copilot on Microsoft platforms is going to be big. I think it's going to have a massive impact on probably some of the white collar work, more affecting that now more than it's affected blue collar work before. So I think it's going to, and it's exciting. And I think that's the other thing, is getting excited about the change and the opportunity rather than defensive and negative and not on the back foot about it. So these things are coming. We're not going to stop them. The only thing I ever promise my team is change. That's all that we're going to do. We're going to change in different ways, but that's what's coming. So being adaptive and in embracing that change as well, I think is huge.
I really like that, being adaptive, being curious or inquisitive, courageous and up for it. And I love that, being excited. Obviously, I'm not technically minded in any way at all, but I love ChatGPT. I absolutely love it. I can't say I am a Microsoft girl, that's what we use, but I can't say I've quite worked out Copilot yet on my Microsoft, but I think it's going to come, and I will get there. What it's predicting, it thinks I'm going to say it, that it doesn't know me. Gets me very wrong. It hasn't cracked me yet. So I feel like more it's cracking me than I'm trying to crack it. But yes, I think those are fantastic messages for young people to take forward. And one of the things that we do quite a lot around in Dallaglio RugbyWorks is about leadership. And that's as much about leading yourself through difficult times as it is about conventional leadership, which you might take in a very sort of military, follow me over the battle ropes, or that sort of leading from behind. But we explore the fact that actually I think increasingly young people are having to lead themselves. There is so much more around entrepreneurialism, not necessarily going to work for big firms like yours, but even if you are, you're probably going to be quite innovative in that space. And I think there's that piece around risk taking as well, and being willing to do what you did, which is to say, I'm moving. I'm coming from the Midlands. I'm coming for you south. And I'm getting on the train and doing it.
Indeed. And I think, I've never heard that leading yourselves before. It's really interesting. And using leadership as a metaphor to leading yourself and being your own leader and taking yourself forward. But I think that's huge. I think the other opportunities that are there today is the multiple ways to learn. So podcasts, audio books, YouTube videos, they're all good for entertainment, but they're also really useful for educating yourself and teaching yourself new subjects, new topics, new things. So if there's something that I'd say as young people, if there's something that you're interested in, you would be able to educate yourself on that area. Get a podcast downloaded or a YouTube video downloaded and watch that in your spare time, when you're on the train, when you go to the gym, rather than putting the music on, put something on that you actually can educate yourself and move yourself forward. And like I said, it's just such a vast way, and it's just vast amount of things that people can learn from now. I think there's a massive opportunity there.
Absolutely. Although my YouTube plumbing do-it-yourself didn't go so well. That wasn't the rip-roaring success I was hoping for. Probably best to leave that there. Stuart, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Just as we wrap up, we're coming up to our half hour. Just as we wrap up, is there anything in particular that you would like to pass on to the next generation? It can be an item, it could be opening a box, it could be a physical item, it could be wisdom. If you were to hand over one thing to the next generation, what would be the thing that you would hand on?
Wow, that's a big question. That's a very good question as well. I'm going to have to remember that one. I'll remember that one from one of my next interviews when I'm interviewing somebody. What would I hand on to the next generation? To repeat myself, I'd say be curious. Yeah. Really just be curious and take those opportunities to learn. Just constantly take those opportunities. They're there. I think one of the biggest educational changes in my life was finding audiobooks and podcasts and using them. I'm a complete addict to them. So I go from everything from Off Menu with James Acaster, which is about food, and I'm a bit of a foodie, to educate myself on food and restaurants and where to go and eat, but all the way through to Stoic Principles and Making Sense by Sam Harris. So have a look at some podcasts. There's huge amounts of information out there. Also rugby podcasts such as this and Joe Marler's podcast, all of those types of rugby podcasts, you can get some fantastic entertainment, but you can also get an awful lot of education and just different ways of thinking and planting seeds in your brain with regards to things and opportunities and just different things out there. So that would probably be my thing, is be curious and use those opportunities to learn and embrace new things, whether that's new education or new technology.
Well, Stuart, that is fantastic. And you get to pass on curiosity to the next generation. And from this podcast, what I will take out is if the door isn't open, knock. If you can't get through the door, climb through the window. I think that's fantastic. Stuart Walters, you've been an absolute pleasure to talk to. Thank you very much for giving up your time. And good luck with taking over the world at BDO.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time too.
Thank you.